So Thomas Mann's or Mann, Thomas Mann, Buddenbrooks follows a family, Buddenbrook family, obviously, and he published it when he was, I think, in his mid 20s, I think, and which is pretty impressive, I think. And it was published in like the early nine. It was like 1901, I think. Because Mann was born in, I want to say, 1870, like seven or something, similar time of like Hermann Hesse, I think, another great German writer, a favorite of mine. But if it comes down to stylistic prose, I'd probably say like Hesse is a bit more of a personal favorite for me. Just like I just like the way he writes a little bit more. That's just a personal preference. I'm not saying anything wrong with uh, Thomas Mann's at all, because he can really kind of um, he's able to convey like the original title of this is like the decline of a family. I think it's like in German, like Buddenbrooks, like the decline of a German family, um, something to that effect. And it follows like in the it's actually kind of a period piece in a way, which is why it might actually call to mind some other like romantic images. That's what I got kind of is a pre-industrialization type of Germany. Wealthy grain merchants, a family run by Johann. I think it's like there's Johann the First, and then it goes down in generational. So there's like his progeny, posterity is all he names. There's a Johann the Second and a third and the fourth, I think, and I think it goes all the way down to the fourth. And the reason it talks about decline is because um, Mann was influenced by Schopenhauer's The World as Will and Representation. Another great German thinker, obviously, from the 19th century. And the similarities there, I think, lie between the fact that like this mammoth, like these wealthy, very, like they're uh, grain merchants. Like they've made quite a bit of money, but at the same time they're struggling. They're going on the downside because a lot of the times it's like things that you can't really prevent, like tuberculosis or like autoimmune diseases and stuff like that. Take the lives of many of the Buddenbrook family, and other times it's just like pure kind of just foolishness or kind of dissoluteness on their part, and where they're like some amount of responsibility can be claimed. Sorry, I can't speak today. Um, but for the most part, it's kind of like they're like I guess Schopenhauer's whole thing was uh, you know, the will to life, in that there's like one insatiable will that all of us had that overpowered our drives, our otherwise reasonable, our desires and compulsions to be um, good people, to think we'll have like totally thought out ways we want to live and think rationally to the best of our ability. Yet these drives for kind of just insatiable to just feed and like vanquish our lust is like kind of just like overrides that most of the time. And that speaks to that's the best of us too, because it's a will to life. It's like you see it everywhere, the will. I think he mentioned something about there being very very old like remains of like an old like seed or something, like an Egyptian seed or whatever, like that had no light for all these years, and like I think it was like contained in an Egyptian container or something, like in the old dynasty of like maybe Ramses or something. And he was saying that like that actually, because it's been a few years since I've read it. It's a very long philosophical work, but he says that like that little seed, the fact that it's able to survive after all this time and still have is like a testament to the will, I think. So that's kind of my shoddy ability to explain it, but that you kind of see that in the Buddenbrook family because they're so defined by one part of them wants to be like Johann Buddenbrook, like the main guy, and his wife Antoinette Buddenbrook. They want to carry on the legacy of their grain merchant, their wealth, and they want all their sons to be great businessmen. But right off the bat, you get these different all these different, the brothers and sisters kind of just dispersing about, and some of them run away to like Chile, I think, and other and end up bankrupt. I think that was Christian Buddenbrook. I think he's like lives a very kind of just like carefree kind of lifestyle and doesn't take any accountability for his actions. And then there's um, Thomas Buddenbrook becomes like a senator, and I think he has a son named Hanno Buddenbrook. And this is the part where I remember, kind of affecting me most. I think was this part because it's told in such a kind of almost like a historical type of matter of fact way, but it also, when it comes to Hanno, which is short for Johann the Fourth, I believe, you feel like or I did, I feel like a lot of pity and kind of not just like kind of like thinking that he's like not trying to denigrate him, but a lot of empathy too for his condition of being a sickly child, a runt basically, and then his father is like basically trying to carry on this grain merchant family and try to, he's trying to basically coerce his kid into being, something that he's not. And Hanno Buddenbrook is basically this very precocious, talented child that shows a lot of promise in the artistic department, but he doesn't, and he's very good at his studies if he puts his mind to it. But a lot of the times he doesn't go down the route of where his father wants him to. He's like, I want him to be pragmatic and hard minded, hard headed. I want him to be practical about this family business, carrying it on, because clearly, Christian, the brother, like he's not going to have anything to do with this family business. Everybody else is just screwing around and not taking this seriously. Hanno has to be it. Like the onus is on him, and then Hanno basically, again, spoilers, but he dies of, I think, pretty young in life. But he doesn't, obviously he doesn't carry out, but he does, he is very, a very efficacious like artist, though he's like able to compose and he's able to write poetry, and he's just very he forms like a friendship with this other German kid, I think in their I don't know if this is set in Lubeck, Germany, but that might have been, if it is, it's probably because Thomas Mann was from Lubeck, so I think there's a lot of parallels there. If it is, it probably is based off of it, but I think there's this clash between the traditional drive to maintain and carry out, old order of things, and then the rapid industrialization of Germany, which is occurring, like is like subsuming it. It's like, and then just like that combined with, the decline of this, it's like multiple different things. It's like this. It's when you combine it, it's like, are the Buddenbrooks that aren't taking this into account, are they actually in their own way being logical and rational, because they see how, like machinery, and that, like the taking away like the brunt of labor, and like the fact, and obviously, Karl Marx talked a lot about this too, like machinery and labor, and then dialectical materialism, which is basically material, or dialectic, which is like, took away, he took a lot of inspiration from Hegel, and he himself, I think, and Friedrich Engels were like left Hegelians, and they kind of formed their own little thing, but along with Max Stirner. Max Stirner was his own thing, obviously, like he was just totally, just completely, just not unbothered by the rest of everything going on, and just like, spooks, everything is just spooks in the mind. That's my like summary, my fifth grade summary of Max Stirner. Although I pity any fifth grader that has to read that, because it is quite, the ego on its own, although short, is very brisk, I guess, very to the point, and just kind of like depressing in that sense. There's a lot of difference between reading philosophical works and fiction works like this. Like, this is like almost a mix of both. It's like a bit history, part kind of like an early marks of a modernist novel, I suppose. Which is interesting because you could probably trace like stylistic other thing as far back as like mid 1800s, I think. Like that's kind of what I heard, but like modernism as it stands, I think Virginia Woolf, I think, said that it officially, like, she cites the year as 1910 as being kind of the thing. And I'd very much like to review something by Virginia Woolf, possibly her great essay, A Room of One's Own, or To the Lighthouse, which I'm going to have to either reread or just um, probably reread. Yeah, I think it's like warrants another read. And Mrs. Dalloway, which is another great. Reminded me kind of that modernist type of thing. Also reminds me of the Lady Chatterley's Lover, too. And I mix the two up probably just because of like Mrs. Lady Chatterley's Lover. Both English. D.H. Lawrence, obviously. And I'd like to definitely talk a lot more. It feels like I'm talking a lot more about other books than I am Buddenbrooks, because I am definitely hazy on the characters in the kind of what's going on, but I do remember some points I took from it were the older Buddenbrook, like kind of the last of his kind, the son, I believe it's Thomas, and basically he tries to, he's trying to sow the seeds of like trying to get this business back in action again, and he's trying to breathe some life into it, but there's a time when he's in older age when he's like just completely like lost his faculties, and he's like, well, not completely, but he's starting to you can kind of get the sense that he's losing his ability to think cogently, and he's doubting his business, and then he starts to have like existential doubts, like really existential doubts, and he like reads Mann, describes this very like he's able to describe kind of that existential dilemma / doubt very, very well, like he did in The Magic Mountain, which I'd like to review really soon, which is basically that Thomas, I think, he's reads a bit of a philosophy book. I can't remember if he names it or not, but reads a bit of a philosophy or psychology, and he's like completely overwhelmed by it, and he's like hasn't actually thought about these kinds of questions, and he's like, like maybe there is no meaning to any of this, like what I'm doing with this business and carrying on the torch. So what's the point? So he just like sits in this chair, I think, and he's like, like the Buddenbrook, like they used to have like this great regal home, and now it's like just like all of them have kind of dispersed apart. They've broken apart. This family's metastasized. Really, it's just sad though. It's like sad because you feel for him. Like he's like, darn it, like, you wish there was more of like maybe a dialectical type of thing where it's like, well, yeah, maybe some elements of the past are good, and you can imbue them and carry them on without them totally being like a dogmatic ritual. Like they don't have to be, like I think you can carry on aspects of the past without them having to be the very essence of what you're doing. You can include them. So, but discussing these types of things like ideas and abstractions and stuff like that was not his thing. Like he's just like didn't know. So it's like all of a sudden it like shook him, and he kind of went into a spell of nihilism. And then I think like shortly after that he passed away. Spoiler alert, all this ends with like a lot of people dying too. It's like this is like quite a bummer. But yeah, so it also reminds me a lot of Sound and the Fury by William Faulkner, because this character, these of a family, and there's also a pretty involved diagram that Faulkner wrote as well. I don't know if I said I'd review that next. I definitely will review it pretty soon, if not next. But yeah, like it reminded me a lot of that, because the Sound and the Fury follows a family, the Compton family, in their decline too, but it's in a different way. It's like it's the old South versus the new. It's like kind of like post Reconstruction period, taking part in the early 1900s. I think. So yeah, it's a pretty, there's definite parallels, I think, And excuse me. It also reminds me a bit of 100 Years in Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez, because the family in that, I can't remember, it started with a B. It's been a while since I've read it. Bunenda family, I think. They're also kind of like on the downside, on the downfall of uh yeah, it's like I think that the theme of a family that, or a family line, or just a singular family, that overarching theme of like kind of just things going to hell in a handbasket, for lack of a better phrase, is very a lot to write. That's very ripe, and there's a lot to be taken from that. There's a lot of thematic qualities that can be drawn from that. Like, should the characters be stand by their family and never question their family, just carry on the business, or should they pursue their own interests and artistic ambitions, maybe at a la Hanno Buddenbrook? That the like these type of questions are very like like a very I think to be very like invaluable, pertinent things that they're not just like you know um so yeah. I think that's all I have for that. Thomas Mann. Yeah, this is, again, I don't know if I've said this, this is his first novel, and I think for that being, especially being a first novel, it was pretty impressive, I think. I'm horrible at remembering like the way prose and like certain things, and recalling certain phrases unless it really really sticks with me, kind of emotionally or meaningfully. But if I do remember, like maybe the prose was a little bit stale at times. Like I felt like I was just kind of like a stringent history, kind of a little bit too detached, maybe. But I mean, for a first novel, I think it's wonderful. That's like that amount of talent coming from someone so young. Um, but yeah, definitely, I plan to read and review more Thomas Mann. So, thank you for watching.